So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. This is a group that I want to talk to you about, and it's called TeachRock. It's a not-for-profit organization, and what it does is it teaches our kids subjects like history and social studies by using music as an introduction to the lessons. So it's not a music, necessarily directly music education, it's civics and history and social studies education, by engaging kids that might, especially those that might otherwise not be engaged through music. And so through this unique process, what I've seen over the years is the results of teaching kids, getting through to kids that otherwise may have been subject to absenteeism, discipline problems, and other challenges because they have a reason to get to school. I want to thank all of you for being here. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. Representative Plouffe, Representative Cataldo, Representative Garbely are here, and our chair, Craven, is here. Thank you. And so, without more, I'm going to introduce you to Bill Carbone, who is the Executive Director of TeachRock. The idea that what we're doing is we want to show you this program. The expectation is that it'll be a tool in your tool chest to go back to your districts and to explain to them the opportunity that this program has for the principals and teachers in the district. So, Bill?
Thank you. Thanks. Well, I want to start by thanking Chairman Gordon for putting this together. This is just incredible. Such an honor to be here with you guys. And I want to thank two teachers from Massachusetts that are joining us that you're going to hear from today. John Wieselowski. Did I get it? Close enough. Close enough. That's not what you want to hear. And Alexandra Wright. You're going to hear more from these two in a few. So to kick it off, TeachRock, as you said, we're on a mission to help every student find joy and a sense of purpose by integrating music into core subject areas. So while our name implies that you might be handed a guitar and taught an AC/DC song, that is not exactly what we do. It's not at all what we do. We are actually in the business
It's something like this that exists.
of, sorry, I'll go to that in a second because it's going to autoplay. We are in the business of trying to drive the same outcomes that you are in your districts, right? So we're thinking, how can we use music to combat crime? How can we use music to combat truancy? How can we use music to improve social emotional learning? How can we use music to close the achievement gap and get kids more excited about learning? So just a brief, short look on the next slide. We were founded by Stevie Van Zandt, who some of you may know as Bruce Springsteen's right-hand man. Some of you may know him as Tony Soprano's right-hand man. But I can promise you that he's the only Rock and Roll Hall of Famer that visits several public schools a year. He's really passionate about TeachRock. He started it in around 2007 as a response to what he had learned about what was happening post No Child Left Behind with the kind of rapid loss of arts programs as schools changed. And his goal was, if we can't have music performance always in school, how can we make sure art stays in the DNA of public schools? And then how can we use that to achieve more? So for someone like him, he would tell you he was a terrible student. He almost failed out of school. Shortly after graduating, he discovered that he was actually a natural historian. As he got into music, he became an organizer. He applied math skills to his life. So thinking, how would it have been that I could have discovered these talents while I was a student, right? That's kind of his guiding principle. So in this next clip, very short video. Sorry, you're gonna have to hear the audio from my computer. But it's Stevie on ABC News with a teacher and a student from one of our classrooms in New York, just talking a little bit about the program.
If something like this had existed when you were a young kid, You think it would have kept me more engaged?
Yeah, I wish, and I mean every teacher I talk to says the same thing. If a student likes one single class or one single teacher, they'll come to school.
The idea of sort of building not just one or two lessons here or there, but building a whole curriculum around this sort of skeleton, this through line history of popular music. And that was kind of like a, brain exploding moment.
I find myself so much more engaged with the class. I am typically a quiet student, but I think this class has really pushed me to always put my hand up, to ask questions, to just engage with the material.
Connecting the dots, that's what it's all about.
So, like I said, really the key that we want to drive to is not arts are cool, we need to keep them, but arts are cool, we need to keep them because they can help us accomplish so many goals that are key in these districts, right? So we have found, I'm just to share to kick it off, we've proven in a number of ways that we can increase attendance and academic achievement. Real quote from a 7th grader, first time I ever wanted to show up and be on time, and it's because I don't want to miss TeachRock. And that was a principal we worked with who had the simple but brilliant idea, let's start a homeroom program with music in it, right? And so now the kids are actually excited to get to school on time because that's their favorite part. And now they're there. So that's one part of the battle. We know that teacher retention is a problem, and we know that some of the districts we work in are looking at 30, sometimes 50% turnover every year. So a study done by Drexel University in 2024 of 293 teachers showed that teachers that are using TeachRock are often significantly happier. We have teachers that reported they were considering retiring but stayed. One testimonial that sticks with me is a teacher who was getting older, finding it harder and harder to find common ground between herself and her students as she got older, and then starting this material and building a bridge. Music builds that bridge and starting to feel like, oh, I connect to these kids again, and she's still there 5 years later.
As you switch, Bill, can you talk about the cost of it? Because we went to know up front.
Sure, should have said that. The cost is that it's free. It's an open educational resource. Everything I share is available. The courses and the work we'll see is available free at teachrock.org. We do offer professional development, customization, and things like that. But the material is open source and free. And I'll speak a little bit about the material in a minute, and particularly what kinds. So we've also seen great results in terms of school culture and disciplinary action. I'll share a little bit about an SEL program in a second, but what we've seen incredible results in terms of basically relationship building, measurable decrease in office referrals, in fights, so on and so forth. So I just shared some of these, but these are some actual numbers. This is the 8% decrease in chronic absenteeism is in a small 5-school pilot that we did. Same with the decrease in out-of-school suspensions and office referrals. So I wanted to give you a sense of where TeachRock is in the country, but also in Massachusetts. There are over 80,000 teachers registered in the country. So to use TeachRock, it's free. You just have to make an account. And more than 80,000 teachers have done so. Here in Massachusetts, there are already over 1,600 teachers that are using TeachRock and are registered on the site. We've reached over 1 million students, and there's teachers in all 50 states right now. So I've said a lot about like what we're trying to accomplish and what can be done, but how do you use music to do all these things, right? I mean, do we sing about math? No, we don't. So I wanted to just give a broad brush stroke example. Then I'm going to walk us into a specific piece of curriculum to give you a really good understanding of it, then Alex is actually we're going to do an activity together. So we're really going to feel it today by the time we're done. But to give a sense of how it might work, one history lesson looks at the story of Anita Lasker-Wellfish, who was a cellist in the Auschwitz Women's Orchestra. And so this is a US history resource looking at World War II, but coming in through the lens of music, right? It doesn't have to all be pop music. It can be. There's also an incredible lesson that uses Bad Bunny to study the Spanish-American War, which you can imagine would be very popular. How do you do it in math? Well, a great example of a math resource on the site that is for middle schoolers working on ratios and percentages is using sales data from Beyonce and Rihanna and asking students to then find, in resources we give them, artists they like so that they can graph, do they want to try to make the case that, Metallica is somehow more powerful? Well, show us on the graph, right? So you get your hands in on that data. Science and STEAM, things like a fantastic resource about the Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound PA system, which they invented in the early 70s, which has students ultimately not only build a small working speaker, it works on the notion that anyone can be a scientist, right? Because those guys don't look like scientists if we think of all scientists as wearing white lab coats, but they were solving the problems they needed to around them, right? And that's the beginning of what it means to be a scientist. And then SEL and wellness. Music is an incredibly powerful tool to start conversations. So for example, there's a lesson that is an excellent introduction into concepts of social anxiety and peer pressure that uses Alessia Cara's song Here. And the lyrics in that song are her singing that she's at a party, but she kind of wishes she had just stayed home because she's uncomfortable. And by starting with her and her experience, we build a pathway into the students being able to talk about how they might feel. So I'm going to move us into a specific resource with one of my favorite, which is the story of the blues musician Muddy Waters. Who here's heard of Muddy Waters? Well, it's okay if you haven't. And that's actually the beauty of it, I think, is that you don't need to have heard about Muddy to have this be exciting. So there are a number of resources on our site that make use of this one clip I'm going to show you. But what you're seeing here is the page for a high school history lesson. This is part of our American History of Rock and Soul. It's a U.S. history elective. It carries U.S. history credit in several states right now. Can also likely be used as a music history course if you wanted. But it looks at 20th century U.S. history through American popular music. So, take a journey in your mind with me to being, let's say, 16 years old, and you were just at the cafeteria. You had a nice big lunch, you were hanging out with all your friends. Now you come back to the classroom and your teacher says, okay, open your book to page 45. Today we're going to talk about the changing social economic classes of post-World War II industrial North. And you start to fade out a little, right? And we know, maybe not next year, but kids here today, we're probably going to instinctively reach for their device to start finding something more interesting. The TeachRock version of that class has the teacher say something like, today we're going to talk about Muddy Waters. Muddy Waters was a successful acoustic blues musician in the 1940s in Mississippi. But he kept hearing recordings of other musicians, and he knew he wanted to make recordings too. So he realized that he couldn't do that in Mississippi, so he was going to have to go north. Let's learn a little more about Muddy Waters.
I didn't get an electric guitar until 1946. it was cost about $100 for the amplifier and the guitar. But the people didn't make enough on the farm to get no guitar too much, you know what I mean? Stand in the throne room, fell down on my knee. At the throne room.
When I was young, I'd never seen an electric guitar. And where we lived, it wouldn't have did me any good anyway because we had no electricity.
This area in Mississippi gave birth to this incredible laundry list of people who are the pioneers of the blues. Honey Boy Edwards, Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters. And some of them, of course, left there.
From the early 1920s, you have this massive migration of African Americans from south to north. Chicago absorbs a lot of southern black migrants. People call it the Up South.
Well, really, what I left the South for is to make records. I couldn't find no way to make records down there. I couldn't get no connection, you know. I said, well, I'm going to Chicago.
Well, I'm gonna wait till late. Won't be back no more. Going back down.
Every bit of music that happens in the context of a space. So at some point, somebody said, hey, we can't hear this acoustic guitar over the amount of people who are here.
And you're playing without any amplifier, and the people having a little fun, taking a little nip, they forget you there.
So let's plug it in. Let's ramp it up.
Got my mojo working, but just don't work on you.
The difference in the Mississippi Delta blues and Chicago blues was they basically just put it on a train and took it up north and plugged it in. Hot-wired the blues.
Got my mojo, got my mojo.
So this clip is built right in. You know, if you go to teachrock.org, you go to the course, you go to any of the lesson plans, they're going to have the media built right in. You can just play it. So in this case, now we're back in our history class, right? We've learned a little about Muddy. We've seen this video. There are a lot of ways we can go. Now, the Great Migration lesson plan has primary source documents built right in, and we use Muddy as the starting point of this movement north, right? Of this industrialization that's happening up there. All these topics, these are the US history topics. These are the social studies topics. But we're getting them through Muddy, and we've got our mojo working now, right? And we hope we got the mojo working in the classroom. And we've also done something really amazing, which is we've flipped the script a little bit on how we talk about the Great Migration, right? So when I learned about the Great Migration, I learned that it was about black people fleeing Jim Crow, right? And it was about oppression and leaving oppression. But when we learn about it through Muddy Waters, we learn about a black man who's already doing something important, who already has success, but chooses the personal agency to go north to do something more. And then we learn that he changed the world by going there, right? He created electric blues, which leads to rock and roll, as you might learn in this lesson, right? So think about the power of that narrative being shifted. I know I'm in Massachusetts, so I'm very comfortable talking about it, but like that's the kind of equity that's baked in so deeply that there's nothing to fight about there, right? It's just a positive narrative of somebody. So we're doing that all the time with music in our curriculum. We're baking in narratives of people in a culturally responsive way that gives them agency and shows them as major players in United States history. So there's more to it, though. So I shared a little about the high school history version. This is a scaffolded version of that same material that would be for a middle school classroom. This time it's Muddy Waters, the new kid in town, right? So it's a social studies resource with an SEL component built in, because we use the story of Muddy Waters, again, to introduce that Great Migration. But then we ask the students to think, what do you think it felt like for Muddy when he got to Chicago, right? Did he feel like he had the right clothes? Well, it said he played acoustic guitar, but then he played electric. Did he show up with an acoustic guitar to a place where everyone else was playing electric guitar? And then the next question, have you ever joined a new sports team? Have you ever switch schools. Have you ever had a moment where you weren't sure you were going to fit in, right? So you can move from somebody else's experience to a young person's experience. Some examples of how that's done. So the middle school version has this Muddy Waters life journey roadmap, right? So it's his stops, his key stops along the way. And then the activity that we ask kids to do with this is to create their own personal roadmap. Think about your life. What are some of the big moments in your life? Let's talk about where you've been and what you're doing, but let's also talk about what you want to do. Where do you think your future stops are? Let's plan a little together. I chose this particular one. I know you probably can't read it that well, but this is from a student in Massachusetts. So what sort of geographic locations are on your map? And the answer is Massachusetts and the Dominican Republic, right? So it's a chance to pull those things out and to celebrate them. My first day of school, and this one is from Long Island. My first day of school was not in Freeport. It was in Allen Park. The first day it was really scary. I didn't know English at all, but my sister had this teacher, so it wasn't that bad. Chance to kind of share some of these things, pull them out. So this is the middle school version where we use Muddy as a way to work some of that in. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex, but I want to just offer an opportunity to, and I'll come back up in a minute, but does anybody have any questions or thoughts about anything that I've shared so far? Yeah?
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or if you've covered it. How many schools in Massachusetts are using your curriculum?
Yeah. I wish I could answer that with a lot of clarity. Because we're an open educational resource, the teachers we have in Massachusetts have registered for the site and are pulling the curriculum. So I know that there's 1,600 teachers. I was telling Ken that I did a little bit of a data dive. There's 62 in Attleboro, and I don't know why. So if anybody can tell me why, find me, please. Which is the only place where there's more is Boston. So, I plan on trying to figure that out. But yeah, so our interactions in Massachusetts have exclusively thus far been people taking the curriculum and pulling it in on their own. Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I just want to break that down. That
Yeah.
means that anyone can access this curriculum today, right now. It's available, it's clickable, and it can be used. The purpose of what we're talking about today is to explain that opportunity for people. But it's there, as you said, it's free, it's self-funded, so they're not looking for money or anything like that. They're just looking to explain the opportunity. But that's why when someone joins, if they have an email address that might say attleboro.us, then Bill would know. If they are on their Gmail account, we wouldn't know, because you don't need anything to get on there. Anyone can have access to these lessons, these units.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can it be utilized for children that are homeschooled?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And have you seen people that have been homeschooled, or is that also like access through the email? You wouldn't know.
No, I have worked a little bit with homeschool communities and collectives that have approached us for a little help here and there. So I know they're doing it, but I haven't like in any formal way worked with them. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Are you able to collect any data that demonstrates kind of the impact of schools that do utilize this, like attendance or test grades or things like that?
Well, if we do a partnership together and I come work with your district, yes. That's the goal when we're working with people, right? So, so the answer is actually yes. We have, when we do partnerships in districts, that's really one of the main things we're asking is, can we look at this together and track outcomes? So we are able to see that when it comes to the open educational resource side, it just goes out there. But we are able to see when we work specifically with schools and districts what happens. Yes. Yeah.
Forgive me if you've already said this, I came in a little late.
It's okay.
So, although you can't say how many schools are using it in Massachusetts
Uh-huh.
because of, like you said, it's just teachers can pull it because it's open access.
Yep.
Do you currently have any partnership districts in Massachusetts?
We do not have any partnership districts in Massachusetts. We have lots in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and California. and Tennessee. Yeah.
Could I follow up on that?
Please.
Are there any districts you're currently pursuing for partnerships in Massachusetts?
Can I?
I'd explain that you are from Quincy.
Yes.
As a little hint. But yes, we're talking to some, or beginning to talk to some, because that is the idea, is that the best way to introduce any idea is to try it out. And the best way to try out this idea, or any idea, right, is pilot in a district. So so part of the reason we're here is if anyone's interested, go back into your districts and you explain the opportunity that you're learning about here. This is all going, as I said, will be available we'll archive it, but you hardly need it because you can just go on to TeachRock.org and see all this for yourself.
And I just want, there's two clear kind of forms of engagement, right? There's full courses. There's an American History of Rock and Soul, which is a U.S. history elective, and then there's a People's Playlist, which is a full U.S. history course built Reconstruction and Near Present that we built in partnership with the Library of Congress. So all the primary sources in it are digitized from the Library of Congress. Those are full courses. Now, somebody can take one unit out of there if they want. They can take one lesson plan out of there. But what we would really love is to work with a school district on trying one, like a course, you know. And then there's a social emotional learning program for middle schools, which is fantastic as well. So same story there. Then there are tons of individual resources that are perfect for things like Indigenous Peoples Day or Martin Luther King Day. Like when you want something fresh to meet a certain moment, we have almost always got it, and we've got it with music. So like our MLK Day resources, there's an incredible lesson plan about Stevie Wonder's song Happy Birthday and how he helped bring MLK Day into existence through the song Happy Birthday. I want to turn it over. Oh.
I'm going to hand out these. We've kind of forgot.
Oh yeah, hand out those. We're going to hand out these too. I'm going to introduce Alexandra Wright, who is going to come up and share a little bit about using TeachRock in her classroom, and we're going to do an activity together. Thank you. I'll come back around with pens in a minute too.
Thank you very much.
Of course. One from you. One from you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alexandra Wright, and I'm a high school music teacher at Norton High School. Norton's a pretty small town, so it's about 20 minutes from Foxborough, if you know the area, or if you know the surrounding towns. We have Mansfield, Attleboro, Easton, that are all local. I am the only music teacher at my school. There's also, a couple years ago, we went through a round of budget cuts, which unfortunately is not uncommon in schools for arts programs. So we used to have 2 music teachers at the high school. Unfortunately, they had to cut my other colleague. So I'm the only one there. So I'm teaching the band, chorus, guitar class, piano, drama, recording arts, percussion. I'm doing all of it. And with all of those classes and with all of those things, it becomes a little bit about music advocacy and arts advocacy at schools too, because you want to make sure that you're remaining relevant. And for my district, music and art is not considered a required subject to take. There is no fine arts credit to graduate. So even more so, I need to market myself as something that can be connected to all of the other subject areas in which I'm essentially competing against for my attention. Because if a kid doesn't take an arts class, they might never meet me. So that's where TeachRock comes in for me, because it allows me to be the through line that connects myself to other subject areas, such as history, science, math, whatever I can find to get into their rooms so they can meet me and understand that music is important and it's a way to express yourself. In this activity, we're looking at 12-bar blues. For my classroom, this might look like a guitar lesson where I'm teaching the blues scale. And for my students, this could just be a scale of notes, or it can be contextualized into a history lesson where you're learning about where it comes from and why it's important as well. So in front of you, you do have a Mad Libs 12-bar blues activity. And if anyone's feeling brave, you can share out. But the purpose of this activity too could be that for schools, often we're sending out surveys to try to get to know the kids, because we're often faced with 20 to 30 kids in a classroom, and you want to get to know everyone individually, but you don't always want to send out a Google Forms survey to do that every time, because a kid is taking that, whatever, they have 7 classes out of the day, right? So this could be another activity for you to do that gets to know the students' town of origin. It gets to know their sense of humor, their creativity. So some of the blanks here could be creating a blues name. Anytime I put together a band, of course, the first thing to go is you have to come up with a rock band name, of course. So they might come up with a creative name or just their own name. And for students who maybe don't want to share about where they're coming from or what their favorite interests are, because that's not cool in high school anymore, they might come up with a fantasy list of things that they'd like to input into each of the blanks. You'll see in there, you could be born in a bathtub in New York, which hopefully no one is, but you can also just customize to get to know the student and their creativity, and then you can build upon that. So you could revisit this activity later too as your classroom grows. As a music teacher, I often am privileged enough to see my students for all 4 years of high school. So if I have a kid in chorus, I might get to see them their freshman year all the way to their senior year. For some kids, that's not the case, but it's nice to be able to connect with them in this way. So I'll show you an example of this being in a classroom of adults.
How do you take something that's so gigantic and sift it down to something that can illuminate the actual story?
I was born in Portland, Maine, on a late summer day.
And so for myself in my room, I might construct a little rock band. I might put someone on the kit. I might have a bass guitar. I might have a guitar and put together a band like that for kids to share out, which is both meeting my goals as the music educator, but also allowing kids to bond and connect, which I feel like is an essential part of high school. Is we can all be individualized into our devices, or we can be giving each other eye contact and building something incredible, which it can be through rock band or any of my instrumental classes. For the general teacher or maybe advisory, where you're meeting as a group or a homeroom and you want to do this activity, you might have a backing track. This particular lesson is most accessible even to people who maybe think they can't sing, because the blues can be sung on one note, and that's all you need. And even if you just want to rap it out with your kids too, I think even spoken word in a rhythmic way is just a way to connect. And even if people are laughing and if you have to go one line at a time and the kids won't fill it out all the way, I think that even just a small tidbit of information from each student can really get people to connect. And for myself as music educator, I can be in every room without being in every room, if that makes sense. So I can continue music in history, in science, in math, without myself, being doubled or tripled, or I can be throughout the school, and they maybe would be inspired to take my classes too. Should I turn it over to John? Oh, do we want to try it?
I have pens. Do we have any aspiring? How are we doing with time?
Yeah, I'm not sure we have.
Okay, we don't have time. We're gonna let you guys off the hook. Next time when we have the cocktail hour version, we'll do the blues. Yes, please.
I am John Wysikowski, and I have the pleasure of following the cool, fun music teacher. Here's the history teacher, the history part of the lesson. I teach in Bedford, Bedford High School. It's about 800 students. We have students from Hanscom Air Force Base, and we also participate in the METCO program. So it's a really nice, we have a lot of students bringing in different experiences and different backgrounds with them. The classes, so the rep reached out to me and said, hey, I wanted to see what you think about this resource, TeachRock. I teach 2 junior classes, so this is modern US history. And I went onto the site and I saw all of the unit plans and I went, wow, there's a lot going on here. I had just pretty much wrapped up in terms of where I was at in the curriculum, 60s, 70s, 80s. So a lot of the liberalism, Black freedom movement, civil rights movement, and then the rise of conservatism. So I said, well, let me look around and see what sort of lessons I could maybe try out with students to connect with something that we've done before. So the 2 that I tried, I asked my students, I said, hey guys, you wanna try this thing out? I found this resource. We've got some music we'll listen to and try to connect it, make some connections to what we've been learning about. And they were like, yeah, we'll give it a shot. So it was the week before April break, and they were good sports about it. And so the 2 lessons that I wanted to try with them, one was from my own childhood. We used to vacation down at the Jersey Shore, drive down through Pennsylvania from upstate New York, and we'd always go through Allentown. And so my dad would put on the Billy Joel cassette, and we'd listen to the Allentown song. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely gonna try that one, because it also fits into the historical event of deindustrialization, and that's something that we do talk about in the course towards the end of the course. Then the other thing, since I had done some music of the civil rights movement, I wanted to look at Black protest music. So we did both of those lessons, and they covered a little bit of a different aspect. There were a lot of other lessons that dealt with economics, like Allentown, but I said, well, I'll do Allentown, then we'll double back and look at Black protest music. So I just wanted to share my thoughts as an educator. I know Bill had spoken about this before, but the resources, they're very interactive. The website was easy to navigate, and it's all there. So, sometimes you'll get educational resources and it just won't quite be everything you were hoping for. But for these, you open it up and they're fully developed, I found them to be fully developed, well thought out, kind of like a batteries included, no assembly required. So if I wanted to, I could just I'll print this out, and primary sources, I'll print those out, I'll put them up around the room. A lot of the questions that were shared for the Muddy Waters lesson, they have those types of questions ready to go. So an essential question, so like when we're talking about Black protest music, what makes an effective protest song? So that's one of those essential questions that it doesn't matter what we're talking about, this is a lesson that applies to your life. If you care about something, what would make a communication about it effective, sharing how you feel. When it comes to Allentown, so what happens when a once thriving industry collapses? What happens to the people that live in that town? And how can something like that happen? So while it relates to the topics, they're much bigger essential questions that we can apply to life in general. And so I really was impressed. The primary sources, the voices from the time, from the events, they really helped to humanize and help students to empathize with what we were learning about, the content we were learning about. And so I wanted to share that with you. I did get quite a bit of student feedback. That was something that I asked from each of them. And one of the things that they really expressed in the feedback, I said basically, hey, pass around index cards. I said, write down 3 things, right? It could be something you learned, what you liked about it, a way that it could be improved. I said, really any combination of them, and my students were great with their feedback. Overwhelmingly, the clarity of the materials and of the objectives, the students were like, yeah, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. And it was easy to understand. The readings were easy to understand. So sometimes there might be an interview, there might be a primary source, lyrics from a song, there might be primary sources. I loved how in the Allentown one, there was, all right, here's a restaurant owner in Allentown describing what happened once the factories closed. Here's someone working at a food bank. Here's, I'm trying to remember what the other ones were, but there was a whole bunch of different perspectives. And like, oh wow, I didn't realize that when the steel mill shut down, how that would affect all the people living in the town. So that was great. I did mention that just the impact of the music, students said, wow, this really hit. Like I felt like I understood what these people were going through. I had talked about that with the empathy piece. But they just had a deeper connection to the content. They liked that it was a different approach to learning history. They said this was more engaging and fun. I mean, I try to make my stuff engaging and fun, but this was cool. We liked this. And they saw a lot of they were able to connect between the historical events and their lives today. And some of the things, some of the feedback that I got, they loved. They said, oh, it was cool to listen to songs that I had never heard before. This was new to me. And it's like when you hear something for the first time, hey, you guys should check this thing out. This was pretty cool. So that was great. Students said, wow, I didn't realize there was a full century of Black protest music. And I found it interesting how different musical styles and messages resonated with different generations. I hadn't really thought of that before. So like a song like Respect, I had never really made a connection between that and Kendrick Lamar's All Right. So that was great for me to see and to hear. The other thing, another connection they made, again, like I said, like how one industry in one town can affect the lives of everyone there. So one student wrote, I learned how Allentown sucks. And I was like, okay, well, that's using some empathy. All right, you got it. You figured it out. Yeah, so it was I'm really glad that I tried it. I think the students felt like it was meaningful. It was authentic. And I think like the Muddy Waters lesson, I hadn't done that one, but I think like that's a great example of, like you had said, someone that's using agency, someone that's making choices, someone that has a lot of talent and ability, and you're sharing their story in an authentic, meaningful way, which I think we need. Like that's, when we're talking about history and social studies, that's really what we want to do. We want to talk about the human aspect, the social aspect. And then the last thing was just, I liked, like I said, the lessons. They're fully fleshed out, ready to go. For a veteran teacher, it can also be a starting point. You can add enrichment if you like. You can build on top of it and make larger connections. But it really was all there. And what was really nice, we have 70-minute blocks at the high school. And each lesson, it has very clear steps. And so maybe, all right, for the first 15 minutes or so, we're going to look at this timeline and try to figure out what's the historical context. All right, for the next 10 minutes, let's look at these images and let's talk about what do you see, what do you notice. Now for the next 20 minutes, pair up, pick a song, listen to it, do a comparison. So that was the other thing that I thought was really great, that had been thought through, that it's not just here's an 80-minute lesson plan. It was very much moving from one thing to the other and shifting and giving students a chance to engage in a variety of different ways. So not as fun as a Mad Libs Blues. I apologize. I didn't know I was gonna have to follow that. But any questions for me? Yes.
Just two questions. So I'm the chairman of the Board of Education in Massachusetts, and I have a general question about professional development. So we hear a lot of, things about districts. Well, we don't want to consider doing anything different because it would take a lot to get our teachers to learn how to incorporate these lessons. We have to put a lot of money into professional development. But what I'm hearing is that this is sort of a plug and play sort of thing. It didn't take you a lot of it just sort of became another tool that you could use to get the question addressed. So my number one question is about professional development. The second one is alignment with Massachusetts frameworks. And I know Bill said this at the end, but I want to make sure it's for the record that this aligns with frameworks that the state puts out. So it's totally a fun way of getting the frameworks to students and effectively, right? So those were my two questions. I just wanted to make sure they were on the record. ED and frameworks.
Those are for you guys.
Yeah, so I can start from my perspective. It's plug and play, which was, I found that to be surprising because a lot of times I'll go out and search for lesson plans and it's like, oh boy, I'm going to really have to work through this one to make it what I need and to make it meaningful and to try to connect to students. That was what I found to be very helpful and refreshing, is that I really could just pull it up. I really could send students. So on the Black protest music, I sent students to the TeachRock website. And I just said, hey, so here's your choices. And for each artist, I think there were maybe 7 or 8 songs, just pick one based on just a basic introduction of what it is. And there was a video clip and a brief, maybe a few paragraph narration of just setting the context. So it's the type of thing, what I found was there really was not, the starting point is ready to go. And then if I wanted to, I could build off of that and share it with my colleagues. But I found it to be, this is not anything that I needed to be trained to use. I think I've been doing this, I've been teaching for 20 years. And so I've taught this stuff before. So I was like, oh yeah, I can just go with it. But I also was thinking through the lens of if I were a first year, second year teacher, man, everything is there. The questions are there, the worksheets are there, the sources are there. So for me, that was, in terms of professional development, I don't really see that as being anything that would need to be learned. And then the second part is in terms of the frameworks, I would say, it aligns, it's the stuff I was teaching already for the history curriculum. But like I said, it's that bonus of the social emotional learning that's what makes kids care. And so the feedback, like I said, the feedback that I got, is wow, I really cared about these people. It wasn't just like, oh, I have to learn about deindustrialization and I'm not really sure why. Or I have to learn about the civil rights movement, but I'm not really sure why I have to learn about it. It was, oh, I get it. There are different ways in which you can express your demands from society and your frustrations at injustice. And there are, real people experience the effects of deindustrialization. And wow, I didn't realize that if a factory closed, so now what do those people do? So that empathy, that making these stories, these are human beings. I have always found that social emotional learning is a way to help kids really internalize the content that's in the frameworks and the skill sets in the frameworks. So that was my experience, yeah.
So for myself, the lessons are primarily STEAM or STEM based. And so for me, I was using it kind of as my own professional development. When you go into music, you go in for music ed and then you're trained to teach chorus, band, general music. You're not necessarily trained to teach recording arts and set up for a live sound event. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. So as I was searching and Googling, I found TeachRock and I found these recording arts lessons where it's, the history of the development of the microphone. It's relating the origin of synthesizers to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. It's all of that stuff. And just like John said, it's just plug and play. It tells you exactly what to say. It tells you what clip to play after that. It's got an image, it's got a video, it's got a writing prompt, it's got whatever you need right there. It's got downloadable PDFs, it's got music linked, it's got extension activities, and then if you go all the way to the bottom of each lesson, all of the standards also linked. So for music, it would be the national art standards. They're all linked there. It'll say, connecting, performing, creating, responding to different aspects of the lesson as well.
Can you explain, and maybe to Bill, your association or involvement with the National Archives or the
Library of Congress?
Library of Congress.
Yeah. Sure. So our grant from the Library of Congress has a digitized, I don't know, millions of primary sources and different items, to the degree that, like if you were, oh, I want to make a history course, great, do you have 2 years to go into the archives and pull things out? So the grant that we got from the Library of Congress was to make a US history course that makes their archive usable and accessible to American teachers. That was the point, right? So we do the work of going in, pulling out the primary sources, aligning, and then our idea of using music as the primary source. So when we go in, easy enough to, to use Muddy Waters. We have a video of Muddy Waters, right? So how do you do reconstruction through music, right? So pretty sure that one uses the Higher Sisters, which is a vocal group that is really sort of the beginning of Broadway and the American musical. So we're pulling newspapers, reviews of them, we're pulling their tour schedule, we're pulling posters, all these other primary source documents and putting them together. So that's what's going on there. And to the question of professional development, well, first of all, I met John about an hour ago, but John, you're hired. So I swear he's not a plant. But when we do professional learning events, well, first of all, we make them as exciting as we hope the classroom will be, So we consistently hear when we work with educators that was the most fun I've ever had at a PD. In fact, it's usually the same. Nobody really wants to come to a PD when they get there. It's kind of, here I am. By the end, people usually want to stay and talk longer, But the point of those PDs is not just to use a lesson plan or a course. It's more of a pedagogical approach. How do you use music as a primary source? How do you do arts integration broadly? The idea being that, okay, cool, you can take these now, but if you want to build your own course next year, you're just going to do it. You're thinking that way, right? So it provides the resources that we have, but also the bigger picture.
We passed legislation dealing with the Holocaust, and Representative Cataldo chaired the commission. And you may have your own question, but I'm going to jump in on the way that we can address anti-Semitism in Massachusetts. I think there is a lesson plan that deals with the Holocaust or anti-Semitism.
Yeah, so within that Library of Congress project, there's a little thread called Amplifying Jewish Heritage. It's just in line with our approach, like the way I explained the Muddy Waters approach. So we just thought, how can we tell meaningful stories to develop empathy? And so everyone learns about Ellis Island. Let's learn about Ellis Island through the journey of Irving Berlin, right? So his personal story is an opportunity to learn about a Jewish immigrant who lands in New York and basically lives the American dream, but also, ends up writing, well, God Bless America, but also White Christmas, which I love that fact. And there's a few other resources like that tell these true stories as an opportunity just to build empathy and awareness of other people existing as just Americans, really, when it comes down to it, right? Yeah. The other one, I'm trying to think of a couple other examples on the top of my head. There's one in progress about Burt Burns. Burt Burns is a music producer from the 50s and 60s, Twist and Shout, lots of hits from that era, I Want Candy, who grew up in the Bronx, in a community that was just like all kinds of people mashed together, but whose Jewish identity was a big part of who he was too.
Apologies, because I did come in a little bit late. So if I'm a science teacher and I want a more interesting way of teaching, help me out, electronics or sound, right?
Yeah,
Technology.
sure, perfect.
I could go in, I could pluck out a lesson, or is this kind of by course or by segment? And if I'm not in the music department, but I just love incorporating them in,
Mhm.
musicals, can I pick and choose a way of folding music into my subject area?
Yeah.
Or is it a whole?
No, that's a great question. You can, and in fact, if you're a science teacher, we don't have an entire course for you. We do, however, have some excellent resources for the things you just, so if you're trying to teach about cellular structure, I'm afraid I can't help. However, if you're talking about sound waves, there's a number of ways. There's things in there that you wouldn't even imagine that we would have found ways to do music. But yes, you can pull an individual lesson. So, well, you mentioned the microphone lesson. It covers. It's kind of a social studies and science combo because it's what is a microphone, how does it work, what's the history of it being invented, but then it also looks at how, as the technology changes, so too does our, what we expect from singers and how we consume music, right? So how it goes from people that shout really loud to people that feel like they're whispering in your ear and how that's connected to the science of what's happening. So just to really quickly say, this is the homepage for all the curriculum. These are the kind of the newest things. So here's an economics lesson with Billie Eilish as the kind of star. So you can imagine how, that's pretty fun. But if you go to the subject area drop down, you can see all the possibilities. So we have a lot more when it comes to social studies, when it comes to language arts, and when it comes to economics and to general music. But we do have, we have an incredible partnership with Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead. We made an algebra curriculum together because he's created all these instruments and calls them Pythagorean instruments. And so I approached his team and said, we want to make an algebra curriculum with Mickey Hart. And they literally said, that's the weirdest thing, he's going to love it. And so we did it. But yeah, so you see all the different great civics, career tech ed built into. So yeah, you can easily just come and toggle one of these drop downs and just see the kind of different things. And you can then, how much you can sort, but also just to give you a sense of monthly themes, or topics, 9/11, back to school, Black History Month, Black Music Month, Earth Day, Hispanic Heritage Month, Indigenous Peoples Day, Martin Luther King Day, Mental Health Awareness Month, Veterans Day, Women's History Month. It just keeps going. So there's a lot of ways to pull, and those are moments when you would just pull one thing in.
Great.
Yes?
Last question.
Sure.
Just briefly, bouncing off what your Raven said, can you speak to how TeachRock aligns programming with individual state curriculum frameworks and standards? Is it done centrally, or is it adapted at the state level, or is it kind of left to the teacher or the district?
So the answer is kind of it depends. We always start centrally and try to do prevailing national standards. And then when we have the opportunity, so I'll use Connecticut as an example. We worked with them. They wanted to take the American History of Rock and Soul course and make it, they have their own open educational resource called Go Open Connecticut. And they wanted to put the course on there as what they call a course in a box. So they said, it's really close, but we just redid our social studies standards and we added a career tech ed framework. Let's work together. So we worked together over the course of a few months to just do a little bit of realignment and then relaunched it that way. So that's the kind of thing we can do for a bigger project. Otherwise, it's central. And then, did you find Massachusetts standards? There are. Well, I'm just going to click this lesson real quick. So let's see here. I'll show you where the standards are so you can see them at the bottom. If you go down to the bottom of the lesson. So, well, this is an economics lesson that we made in partnership with Georgia Council for Economic Education. So it has Georgia standards, social studies, which are national, Common Core, state. Yeah, so this one does not have the state. So we would have to we could do it, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
not receiving it, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you. Thank all of you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And please take a sandwich or two or three or five.